Our story begins as a global game announces its shutdown, and while everyone else is frantically selling off their gear to recoup some cash, Lin Feng decides to sell his house and take out loans just to top up his account. Others mock his apparent stupidity, but only he knows the truth. The moment the servers close, the entire world will change. Every monster, from lowly zombies to ancient demon gods, will descend upon the earth. Only those who kept their game characters will inherit their digital powers. In his past life, Lin Feng sold his account to face reality, only to die within hours. In his final moments back then, he made one last call to his in-game partner, Su Wanting, hoping they might meet again in another life. He said his farewells, but when he opens his eyes once more, he finds he has traveled back in time to just before the game's shut down. Incredibly, he is currently on the phone with Wanting herself. Her voice comes through the receiver, sounding confused by his sudden intensity. She tells him to stop talking nonsense. Just because New Era is closing doesn't mean it's the end of the world. They can simply find another game. Besides, there are still 2 weeks left to play. She asks if he plans to sell his account like everyone else, but he quickly refuses. He realizes the account wouldn't fetch much money now anyway. More importantly, it holds all his memories, and he intends to play until the very last second. Hearing her give the exact same answer as before, he confirms he has truly returned. When he remains silent for a moment, Wanting's tone shifts. She asks with a hint of disappointment why he isn't speaking, wondering if he really is considering selling his account after all. To her, this world is more than just a game. It is a beautiful memory, and Lin Feng is the most important part of that journey. Naturally, the thought of him choosing money over staying with her until the end hurts. In his past life, she truly was disappointed by his choice. Yet, when the monsters arrived, Wanting, who had inherited her character's powers, still came to save him immediately. Sadly, he didn't survive the day. With that memory in mind, he smiles and promises her he won't sell. Instead, he will stand by her side until the very end. He vows to take her through every dungeon and scenic map they never got to finish. She sounds delighted, asking if he truly means it. They make a promise, and she tells him to get some rest so he can carry her through the game tomorrow. A perfectly ordinary request, or so she thinks. After hanging up on that sweet promise, he opens the game forums. Unsurprisingly, they are filled with players venting their rage at the developers. As he scrolls, he sees countless players dumping their gold. 100 million gold coins are being sold for a mere 100,000. We see that in this world-class MMO, gold used to be pegged 1-to-1 with real currency, but now the value has plummeted to 1,000-to-1. Deep down, Lin Feng knows there is no rush to buy yet, as prices will continue to crash. He keeps scrolling until a specific post catches his eye. His eyes light up at the sight of the Staff of the Storm God, a max-level artifact and the only one on the server, listed for 60,000. As a mage, he is ready to pounce, only to realize he currently lacks the funds. However, he decides instantly to sell his house tomorrow. After all, once the game invades reality and the monsters descend, even the grandest skyscrapers will be nothing more than rubble before them. He immediately contacts an agent, and since his apartment is in a prime school district, a buyer reaches out almost as soon as the listing goes live. The offer is $3 million in cash, though contracts and fees mean the transaction won't be finalized until tomorrow at the earliest. He isn't worried about the wait, as he has plenty to do, starting with taking out every possible loan, since debt won't matter once the world ends. While the house is still technically his, he enters his information into various lending apps, and soon enough, the approvals start rolling in. He withdraws over $1 million, but knowing this is far from enough, he seeks out specialized high-interest lenders to squeeze out even more. By using the house as collateral again, he secures another $1.6 million. With his pockets full, he calls his old classmate, Fatty Zhang. Before the shutdown, Zhang was a major professional trader in New Era, amassing a fortune of tens of millions over the last few years. But this sudden closure has pushed him to the brink of bankruptcy, and when the call connects, Lin Feng gets straight to the point. He tells Zhang he wants to help him minimize his losses, asking if the trader can source a staggering 1 billion gold coins. He offers to buy it all at market price, leaving Zhang in utter shock, wondering if his friend has truly lost his mind. Zhang points out that everyone is looking for a sucker to dump their gold on, but Lin Feng simply tells him not to worry about the details. He also asks Zhang to find a legendary mage set, rare pet eggs, and even gold-tier eggs. To be honest, he's planning a total shopping spree. Since the fashion market has also collapsed, he instructs Zhang to buy up all the premium skins and every equipment enhancement stone available. Zhang agrees to the deal at market rates and tells him to log in so they can begin the massive transfer of assets. The gold and pet eggs arrive first, and a few hours later, Lin Feng receives the mountain of high-end equipment Zhang has managed to gather. Zhang even threw in some premium fashion sets as a bonus, which we see Lin Feng plans to give to Wanting. By the time he finally logs in, it's already quite late. He immediately sees a message from Su Wanting, asking if he's lost interest in the game, noting that in the past, he never would have logged on this late. She tells him she won't force him to stay if he's finished with it, and that she's willing to follow him to any other game he chooses to play. They have been together for 2 years, and though they've only ever met online, they know each other deeply. After reading her words, he can't help but smile. Without wasting any time, he tells her to open her vault and join his voice channel, instructing her to meet him at the warehouse immediately. He promises to show her something special, and as soon as Su Wanting joins the party and reaches the warehouse, she is stunned by the mountain of supplies. She gasps at the sight of so many pet eggs and the legendary god of law Set, while Lin Feng explains that gathering these was the reason for his delay. He points out that with the market crashing, they can finally afford everything they once couldn't. To be honest, it's the perfect time for a shopping spree. He reaffirms his promise to stay with her until the very last second, insisting they play properly and gather the best gear to build their strength. He plans to take her through the Twin Star Lake dungeon and the Celestial map, but she is more focused on the fact that he bought gear for her too. She asks if it's the legendary moon goddess Set, and he confirms that he's already commissioned someone to source it while they focus on their next task. He wants to focus on fusing the pet eggs, hoping to produce 2 mythical tier pets, but Wanting insists she can't let him spend all the money alone. He couldn't let her spend her own money alone, so he offered up his own savings as a tribute. And just like that, the familiar chime of a received payment echoed from her phone. To his absolute surprise, the transfer is for 6 million. After knowing her for 2 years, he finally realizes his friend is actually incredibly wealthy. He wonders what kind of life she leads if 6 million is just pocket money, but he doesn't press her, knowing this extra capital will be vital. With Wanting's funds, he can now expand his plans, though he suddenly recalls a memory from his past life after the game invaded reality. Back then, Su Wanting had rushed to save him, but was intercepted by a level 90 divine silkworm. For a priest to hold off such a beast alone was incredible. It meant her gear must have been top tier even then, suggesting she would have bought it herself anyway, so he reaches out to Fatty Zhang once more. He sends a voice message to Zhang, telling him to buy every single pet egg available on the market and to begin fusing them immediately. Zhang responds enthusiastically, realizing Lin Feng is trying to corner the entire market, and before long, he has secured over 500 eggs. The pet eggs soon arrived in his account, and we see Lin Feng send them over to Su Wanting so they can begin the long process of fusing them together. In the world of New Era, pets are incredibly powerful combat partners, though they must complement their master's class to reach their full potential. Fusing high-level eggs is an expensive gamble, which explains why top-tier pets are so rare. 10 minutes later, Wanting speaks up in the party channel. She admits that in the past, handling items worth 5 or 6 million would have made her heart race with nervous excitement. But Lin Feng, having already experienced death itself, isn't so easily shaken. As the blinding light fades, a strange, otherworldly cry echoes through the air. A baby stegosaurus appears, its back lined with fan-shaped spikes, a creature known for its legendary defense and its loyalty to its master. Once tamed, it will absorb a massive percentage of the damage meant for its owner. It's quite good, though it doesn't quite reach the extraordinary tier. Wanting, however, is absolutely delighted by how cute it is. Lin Feng has no use for such a pet himself, but he's happy to let her keep it. Since she likes it, he figures it will make a fine mount for her. After that, they return to the eggs, and soon a brilliant, multicolored glow erupts. The light is so intense they have to shield their eyes. Meanwhile, a few players wander into the quiet warehouse area and take notice of the spectacle. One of them shouts to his leader to look at the rainbow egg, while another scoffs, wondering why anyone would waste money right before the server closes. They suspect he might be a wealthy target and decide to mark him. A moment later, Lin Feng receives a party invite that is immediately retracted. He realizes instantly that he's been spotted by scavengers, players who hunt others for sport. In this game, there are no real-world laws to restrain them. It is a lawless, digital frontier where the strong prey on the weak without consequence. He knows these types will try to hunt him down and strip his gear, but since his own equipment and pets aren't fully powered yet, he isn't worried. He certainly won't be leaving the safety of the main city just yet. As the radiant light finally settles, the new pet stands before them. It is the vermilion bird, a fusion of a sparrow and a phoenix. After reading its talent skills, Lin Feng is genuinely stunned by its power. As a mythical tier pet, it possesses both massive explosive damage and the ability to be reborn from ashes. A prompt then appears to assign ownership. Before he can even say a word, Wanting smiles and waves her claim, noting that the vermilion bird is a fire-type pet perfectly suited for his class. She insists he take it so he can handle the damage output, while she and her baby stegosaurus focus on protecting him from harm. Lin Feng didn't waste time being overly polite and accepted the pet. Immediately, a world announcement flashed, congratulating him on being blessed by the goddess of luck. He had obtained the vermilion bird, a mythical tier pet, and the only one of its kind on the server. Naturally, the once quiet world chat exploded instantly. Some were amazed that such a creature could be pulled so close to the server's end, while others questioned the point of it all. They argued it was a waste of money for just a few days of glory, yet because New Era is so immersive, many players remained dedicated to the very end. Like Su Wanting, they intended to play until the final second. Lin Feng, however, ignored the chatter as he still had a great deal to prepare. Before long, Fatty Zhang sent over another batch of goods, including a level 100 priest set, enhancement stones, talismans, and various rare reagent recipes. These items were essential for what was to come. After paying, he handed the priest gear to Wanting and shared his next plan. He explained that once they finished upgrading, they would tackle 200 treasure maps to hunt for divine beast pills or bloodline elixirs. Once their combat power peaked, they would head to the Heavenly Palace, a prospect that left Wanting absolutely thrilled, as it had always been her dream. The Heavenly Palace is notoriously difficult, the toughest dungeon in the game. Previously, only the wealthiest whales spending millions could hope to clear it. Now, with just a fraction of that cost, Lin Feng was already fully geared. As they teleported away, he hoped to lose the scavengers following them. Unfortunately, they were persistent and kept up the pursuit. Just then, Fatty Zhang messaged saying he had secured the staff of the God of Magic. He also found a pair of rare rings and a storage item with 1,000 slots. Lin Feng was delighted and urged him to mail them immediately. Such storage would be invaluable both in the game and in the reality to come. After that, he and Wanting cleared every single treasure map. He fed all the divine beast pills to the vermilion bird and the stegosaurus. In moments, they evolved into pets comparable to level 70 bosses. With his pets strengthened, he told Wanting they were heading to Tianyue City, a location chosen specifically because it is a private territory. His plan was simple: by the city itself to serve as a fortress when the game invades reality. The billion gold coins he had Fatty Zhang collect were for this moment. After negotiating with the current lord, the deal was closed for 800 million gold. Once he held the authority, he took his first action. He immediately appointed Wanting as the vice city lord. By the time they finished, it was late, and after she fell asleep, he finally allowed himself to rest. He drifted into a deep sleep, only to be jolted awake the next morning by a phone call from a man whose voice he didn't recognize. The voice on the line asked if he was Lin Feng, identifying himself as Bai Haixing, the client who had purchased his house for his daughter. He explained that since she had never lived away from home, this new city felt foreign, so he hoped Lin Feng wouldn't move out just yet. He wanted Lin Feng to stay and look after her, since he hadn't found a new place yet. He agreed, though he found the request quite strange. He wondered if the daughter was perhaps incredibly unattractive for her father to be so trusting, but little did he know, Bai Shiyi was already celebrating. Shiyi cheered to Su, wanting that everything was ready to give Lin Feng a massive surprise tomorrow. Meanwhile, Lin Feng simply went back to sleep. Our protagonist didn't sleep for long before a knock at the door startled him. Annoyed, he shouted that he already had his delivery and they must have the wrong house. As a shut-in, he rarely had visitors other than delivery drivers, but to his surprise, a woman's voice responded from the other side of the door. She asked if this was Lin Feng's home and introduced herself as Bai Shiyi. He was stunned, as he hadn't expected her until the following day. It was 10 o'clock at night, a bit late for a housewarming, one might say, and when he opened the door, he didn't find a dinosaur at all. Instead, he saw a stunning woman with long black hair and a perfect figure. Shiyi, seeing him staring blankly, felt a flash of irritation. She grumbled to herself, wondering why Su Wanting would stop playing games with her just to spend time with a man like this. He snapped out of it and invited her in, asking if she had driven herself there so late at night. Shiyi nodded while inspecting the apartment. His eyes lit up, realizing that a family who could drop 3 million on a house surely owned a luxury car, another asset he could potentially liquidate. In his mind, the more cash he had for the coming apocalypse, the better. Suddenly, Shiyi asked if he was still playing New Era. He confirmed he would play until the very last second, and she smiled, noting that she had exactly the same plan for the server's end. The shared topic of the game instantly broke the ice between them. Shiyi proudly mentioned she was a level 100 warrior aiming to become a Valkyrie. He smiled and invited her to join his group for a new dungeon, confident they could secure the first kill and its generous rewards. Shiyi looked at him skeptically, questioning the point of rewards when the game was ending, before suddenly changing the subject entirely. She asked if he truly didn't remember her or her in-game persona, Little Bird. Lin Feng froze as the realization finally hit him. He finally remembered that back when he was a complete novice in New Era, they had actually been teammates in a dungeon crawl. We see that back then, he had encountered Su Wanting in a group that also included a female character named Little Bird. She was known as Little Bird in the game. In reality, she was a young woman, and it turns out she wasn't small at all, proving that game IDs are rarely reliable. After that, he and Bai Shiyi joked around for a bit before heading to their rooms. Having been teammates who bickered constantly, they felt no awkwardness now, but suddenly, he realized that given her close relationship with Su Wanting, Wanting must have known about the house sale all along. He quickly sent her a message. He asked if she knew everything. About 10 minutes later, Wanting replied that she had been showering and asked if Shiyi had arrived yet. She teased him, asking if he was happy with such a beautiful surprise. He replied that it was more like a shock, finally understanding her hesitation earlier. Wanting admitted she knew. She thought he was incredibly foolish to sell his house for her dream, but she found it quite endearing. She even added a shy emoji. He joked back, suggesting that was why she hadn't hesitated to give him all of her private savings. Seeing her reply, he felt a wave of relief, and they began chatting happily, even though they were only a couple in the game, and had never met in person. Years of daily companionship had made them feel no different from a real-life couple. He told her the house could be earned back later, and he would buy her an even better one when they married. For now, he just wanted her to be happy. He knew the server shutdown was hard on her, even if she didn't show it. His words moved wanting deeply, though it sounded like a grand boast. Girls often fall for such gestures, especially since he actually had sold his house to play with her. She replied that she was completely touched. After a while, he said he needed to sleep, but Wanting was too happy to rest. She pulled Shui into a chat and told her everything. To an ordinary person, selling a house to play a dying game is utter madness. To be honest, it makes no sense whatsoever. But to a wealthy young woman, this was the height of romance and true love. Even Shui, who usually felt nothing for men, couldn't help but remark that with such a good boyfriend, Wanting wouldn't need her anymore. There was a hint of jealousy in her voice, but as soon as she finished talking to Wanting, Shui opened a different chat window. The contact was labeled as Guild Leader. She sent a message stating that she had found what the guild leader was looking for. The guild leader instructed by Shui to get as much information from him as possible and report back immediately. Shui agreed, then decided to head to bed. She turned off her phone, exhausted from hours of driving, and fell asleep instantly. Meanwhile, Ling Feng found himself unable to rest, knowing what was coming. Tomorrow, the official announcement for New Era would confirm the server shutdown. Prices would plummet, and he needed to use Shui's luxury car to secure more funds. He had to move carefully to avoid drawing attention. After his recent maneuvers, he was certain that some players in the game were already watching him closely. At 8 o'clock the next morning, as sunlight filled the living room, Ling Feng placed breakfast in front of his new roommate, by Shui. Right on time, the official website released the announcement that took every player's breath away. The content was, to be honest, incredibly shameless. The developers claimed the game's core, the Star Stone, was from outer space and had run out of energy. They offered absolutely no compensation to the players. Instead, they made a vague promise about a new version in 5 years. This effectively declared that every account and divine item was now worthless junk. The forums exploded instantly. Devastated players began a desperate campaign of destruction, smashing their divine weapons and burning rare materials in a futile protest. But in the eyes of the reborn Ling Feng, this abandoned data would become life-saving artifacts in just half a month. It was the perfect time to harvest. We see him immediately call his childhood friend, Zhang Chunlin. It was time to put his plan into motion while the world was in chaos. Gold prices had already collapsed. 100 million gold coins now cost a mere 1,000 yuan. Suppressing his excitement, Ling Feng gave Fatty Zhang his orders. He told him to start buying 100 billion gold coins to start. He wanted every top-tier crafting material and rare treasure available at the lowest possible price. Zhang Chunlin pressed him for inside information, but Ling Feng simply gave him a calm warning. He told him there was no inside scoop. However, he advised that if Zhang trusted him, he should keep his own account and stockpile survival items. Hanging up, Ling Feng looked at the screen full of rage. A cold smile played on his lips as he watched videos of players destroying their gear. He finished the call and looked up to find Shui staring at him. She had heard everything, his frantic orders to buy millions worth of items, no matter the cost. Every word had reached her ears clearly. At this moment, Ling Feng was well aware of how suspicious he looked. He needed a way to explain his sudden, reckless behavior. Claiming he was betting on the developers giving into pressure was a weak excuse, full of holes. To be perfectly honest, it was hardly believable. She didn't believe him for a second, but seeing the absolute determination in his eyes, she felt a flicker of concern for his potential loss. Fearing he might lose everything and end up starving, Bai Shi sighed, her tone softening as she remembered their time fighting side by side. She promised that if Ling Feng truly hit rock bottom, she could return to the Su family to help him borrow money to get by. Ling Feng felt a slight stir in his heart at her kindness, but deep down, he couldn't help but think of her as a naive girl. In half a month, this money wouldn't even be worth the paper it's printed on. Only the materials he was hoarding would be their ticket to survival. After sending away the worried Shui, we see him return to his computer. While Zhang Chunlin handled the real-world harvesting, Ling Feng had other plans. Inside New Era, he had a plan that was even more expensive and far more insane. He headed straight for the capital's recruitment hall. Standing there were 4 top-tier NPCs who had been ignored by players: Forging Master Duan Zhutian and Alchemy Master Yao Linglong. Alongside them were Formation Master Kuei Shan and Tailoring Master Lin Xiaoqiao. In this world, these 4 represented the absolute pinnacle of their crafts. Their recruitment conditions were notoriously harsh, requiring massive amounts of gold and rare materials that no guild had been willing to pay. Now that the server shutdown was official, everyone else was busy dismissing their NPCs to recoup whatever small costs they could. To ordinary players, these 4 were nothing more than high-level code about to be deleted, complete and utter digital junk. But Ling Feng knew better. In 2 weeks, these NPCs would be his foundation. Duan Zhutian, for instance, could forge divine weapons. Yao Linglong could brew pills that brought the dead back to life. With them, his Sky Moon City would possess the only top-tier industrial system on Earth. Without a moment's hesitation, he transferred 500 million gold coins to sign them to lifetime contracts. The system announcement flashed instantly. The server-wide message congratulated Ling Feng on recruiting the 4 great masters. For a moment, the world chat fell into a stunned silence. Then, a wave of mockery erupted. Players wondered if Ling Feng had lost his mind, buying NPCs that couldn't be saved. Was he planning to be buried with the game? He watched the screen fill with insults and ridicule, yet he remained completely unfazed. Meanwhile, Zhang Chunlin was moving even faster than expected. In just a few hours, the first batch of 10 billion gold coins had been transferred to his account. The New Era auction house was now a scene of despair. Items that were once rare and priceless, like deep-sea secrets and oath crystals, were now being dumped like common trash by the roadside. It was a fire sale of epic proportions, and for Ling Feng, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. Zhang Chunlin sounded panicked, asking why Ling Feng was throwing 10 million in cash into a dead end, wondering if the developers were secretly planning a data migration. He joked that if this wasn't the case, they'd both be sleeping in cardboard boxes under a bridge by tomorrow. Listening to his probing tone, Ling Feng felt a wave of nostalgia. As lifelong friends, he truly wanted to save the man, but how much Zhang would believe was ultimately up to fate. He chose not to reveal the truth about the apocalypse just yet. Instead, he calmly told him there was no inside information, but suggested that Zhang should prepare his own account by hoarding as many high-level potions and survival items as possible. He assured him that these items would soon be far more meaningful than the numbers in his bank account. To be honest, it was the best advice anyone could give. Zhang Chunlin remained silent for a long time before finally gritting his teeth and agreeing. After hanging up, Ling Feng watched his inventory fill with top-tier resources. The blueprint for Sky Moon City was finally becoming clear in his mind. Other players were busy mocking him for being a fool who bought everyone's trash, but they had no idea. In half a month, when the dimensions overlap, these materials they discarded like junk will become the only hard currency capable of buying a life in the new world. With the tens of billions in materials Zhang Chunlin had swept up, Ling Feng turned his attention to the most dangerous gamble in the game, high-level equipment enhancement. In New Era, the risk was absolute. One failure meant the equipment would shatter into dust, which is why almost no one dared to push for maximum reinforcement. But Ling Feng had the forging master Duan Zhutian on his side, along with secret enhancement techniques he had brought back from his previous life. As sparks flew from the anvil, the system notifications began to flash across the screen like machine gun fire. Success at +13. Success at +15. The golden light radiating from the screen was almost blinding to any onlookers. When the final eternal crystal shattered, a bolt of dark gold lightning streaked across the sky. The server's first ever set of +18 God of Magic gear was officially born. Even for a regressor like Ling Feng, seeing the final stats brought a cold sweat to his brow. His magic attack power had soared to 78,000, and his movement speed was now high enough to leave afterimages behind him. It was, quite frankly, a terrifying sight. These values had completely shattered the game's balance. Top-tier players and elite guilds were now nothing more than dust he could sweep away with a single wave of his hand. Su Shi watched from the side, completely stunned. She even asked him with a hint of worry if the system might ban him for looking like a cheater with such high stats. Ling Feng gave a faint smile and patted her head, telling her not to worry. The operating company was currently in such chaos that no one was monitoring the game anymore. Besides, he wasn't doing this to become a king in a dying game. He was doing it because in half a month, when the monsters finally descend upon the earth, this gear would be the only thing standing between humanity and total extinction. And so, the real preparation was only just beginning. Having absolute power is the only way to protect those you care about in this hellish apocalypse. Now that his god-tier gear is complete, it is time to head to the Southern Heaven Gate. He intended to reclaim the rewards that were rightfully his. Half an hour later, we find the battle inside the Southern Heaven Gate dungeon reaching a fever pitch as Ling Feng and Zhu Niao coordinate their attacks. While Jianlong struggles to hold the line against the crushing pressure at the front, Su Wanting, acting as the team's priest, keeps the holy light of healing flowing almost without pause. She is the only reason the team hasn't been wiped out yet. Ling Feng calmly directs Su Wanting, warning her that the great ape generals must be pulled 2 at a time, never more than 3. These elite monsters possess a firepower skill similar to a monkey's fur-plucking technique. Once they take high damage over a large area, they immediately summon a sea of great ape warriors. Although Ling Feng is now draped in god-tier equipment, if he gets trapped in an endless field of monsters, achieving a 50-minute clear time would become quite uncertain. 10 minutes later, the effects of the storm field and burning heaven ground finally dissipate. To be honest, the battlefield had become a chaotic mess of elemental fury. By now, the corpses of the great apes are piled up like mountains, and both Ling Feng and Su Wanting have seen their levels soar to level 102. However, 3,000 small monsters still remain on the field. Without his large-scale crowd control skills, their efficiency begins to drop sharply, forcing Ling Feng to make a quick decision. He decides to clear the elite monsters first, making the remaining 12 great ape generals his primary targets for a focused takedown. Jianlong steadily holds the monsters' hatred. Ling Feng chains his blade edge with Wind Sand Flame to inflict a blind effect. Within 5 seconds, he unleashes a staggering 130,000 hits, coordinating with Zhu Niao's flame beads. The combined assault is enough to take them down directly, which, naturally, was exactly what they needed to happen. As they move forward, the remaining monsters begin to ignore Ling Feng's attacks entirely, desperately rushing toward their king. Su Wanting watches with growing concern, noting that the Great Ape King's attack power has reached a terrifying 68,000. She fears Jianlong won't be able to withstand it. Ling Feng's gaze remains hardened. If the line can't be held, they must adapt. He tells her that if things get desperate, he will step up to the front lines himself. The battle erupts in full force at the 35-minute mark. The storm field once again covers the central battlefield as Ling Feng and Zhu Niao rain down damage like a torrential storm. They hammer away at the Great Ape King. When its health drops to 70%, the beast swings a fist in a violent rage, its 10-meter-tall body seemingly cracking the very earth. A massive shockwave ripples through the ground, and Ling Feng's health instantly evaporates by 40%. Suddenly, the entire team enters a state of extreme survival risk. That earth-shattering punch from the Great Ape King completely shattered the rhythm of the battlefield. Looking at his health bar, which is now less than half full, Ling Feng feels his heart leap into his throat. The title of Battle God is clearly no exaggeration when facing this kind of indiscriminate, overwhelming damage. At this stage, it was essentially a dimensional strike. Ling Feng shouted for Su Wanting to ignore him and focus all her efforts on keeping Jianlong alive. By now, fine beads of sweat had formed on Su Wanting's forehead as her staff moved so fast it left afterimages. Jianlong, standing at the front, bore the brunt of the Great Ape King's fury. His health bar was draining like a leaking pipe, even with Su Wanting's staggering healing output under this level of sheer devastation. Jianlong's extraordinary defense began to look quite fragile. Meanwhile, the Great Ape King's health continued to slide, dropping past 50 and then 30%. Every time he lost a chunk of health, he let out a frenzied roar, summoning hundreds, no, thousands, of great apes. The entire central battlefield was now completely filled with a dense, suffocating swarm of monkeys. The situation had turned tragic. Just as the king's health dipped below 20% and he entered his final berserk state, he raised his mountain-like fists high into the air. His targets were the two standing directly in his path, Zhu Niao and Jianlong. After a deafening explosion, dust filled the air. Jianlong, taking the hit head-on, let out a mournful cry as his massive body turned into white light and vanished. He was forcibly sent back to the pet space. Zhu Niao fared even worse. Under the massive physical crushing damage, his health bar was instantly wiped clean. Due to the extreme heat, his entire body exploded into a ball of dark red fire. Su Wanting let out a cry of shock, her eyes instantly reddening. If any other players had been watching this, they would have assumed Ling Feng's dream of a perfect clear was utterly shattered. But at that very moment, a cold, sharp smile tugged at the corner of Ling Feng's mouth. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Amidst the drifting ashes, a crystal-clear red orb the size of a fist emerged at the center of the flames, frantically absorbing the surrounding fire elements. The system notification rang out like a thunderclap. Divine Beast Bloodline detected. Zhu Niao had triggered the hidden skill, Nirvana. In an instant, a terrifying pressure swept across the field. The shattered fireball expanded violently, and a new Zhu Niao, twice the size of the previous one, emerged from the shell with burning golden wings. With full attributes and triple damage, his magic power directly broke through the 80,000 mark. The reborn Zhu Niao let out a crisp, phoenix-like cry, exhaling a blast of golden true fire that instantly vaporized the surrounding small monsters and slammed directly into the Great Ape King's chest. Ling Feng didn't waste a second. With bloodshot eyes, he took advantage of the boss being stunned by the Nirvana shockwave. He poured all his mana into his staff, unleashing one final, enhanced blade edge burst that tore through the air and pierced the Great Ape King's chest. With one last unwilling roar, the massive beast that called itself the Battle God finally collapsed. The server announcement rang out right on time, congratulating the team of Ling Feng and Su Wanting for completing the dungeon in 43 minutes and 52 seconds. They had claimed the first clear of the Southern Heaven Gate, earning a 100-fold experience reward. Ling Feng let out a long breath as his level soared to 113. He knew this was merely the first step in establishing absolute dominance before the end of the world arrived. And while we see Ling Feng and Su Wanting building their rapport while grinding mobs in the dungeon, the respawn point in the capital city of Zhangqiang was absolutely buzzing with chaos. A beautiful young streamer named Lin Xiaoya was posting a tearful complaint. She had just reached level 30 only to be ambushed by gold thieves who took everything. At that moment, the bandits known as the Ghost Power Psychopath Hunters were lurking outside Tianyue City. To be honest, they were quite persistent. They had intended to ambush Ling Feng, but since he hadn't left the dungeon, they turned to bullying new players to earn a few $100 a day. Inside the dungeon, Ling Feng didn't give these clowns a second thought. He was busy leading Su Wanting through a clever exploit of the dungeon's mechanics. The giant general would continuously summon subordinates, creating a perfect natural training ground. After 2 hours of high-intensity grinding, Ling Feng and Su Wanting's levels skyrocketed to 115, while Zhu Niao and Jianlong reached level 120, fully loaded. They exited the dungeon and logged off for lunch. Before leaving, Ling Feng returned to Tianyue City to place an order for 1,000 sets of handmade gear. His strategy was crystal clear. Top-tier 9-star equipment was rare, but one could extract perfect attributes from a massive volume of handmade items. By using the Tiangong crystals Zhang Chunlin was collecting, he could transfer those stats to mediocre 9-star gear, mass-producing god-tier equipment by hand. In the living room, his roommate Bai Shu relayed a meeting request from the guild leader, Xuanmu. Ling Feng took charge of cooking lunch. His years as an orphan had made him an excellent cook. Bai Shu joked that Wanting would be very lucky in the future. After eating, Ling Feng logged in and added Xuanmu. This top female guild leader possessed incredible emotional intelligence. She didn't try to pressure him, but instead asked for his thoughts on the game's compensation. Ling Feng gave her a cryptic answer about preserving accounts. Ultimately, Xuanmu not only agreed to let Bai Shu join Ling Feng's team, but she even applied to join the squad herself. Ling Feng welcomed the addition. Just then, a massive package arrived in his mail from Zhang Chunlin. It contained 1,000 Tiangong crystals priced at 80,000 and 100 rare pet eggs for 100,000. Ling Feng paid the 1.3 million without blinking. Zhang Chunlin sent a message complaining that Yi Tenglong was still mocking Ling Feng in the class group chat, which had annoyed him so much he simply quit the group. Ling Feng simply smiled at the news, instructing Kai to keep driving prices down and sweeping the market. As for those 100 colorful eggs, Ling Feng had no intention of letting them go to waste. He recruited a large group of trainers at the city lord's mansion to raise them all. His goal was to build a beast legion capable of crushing everything before the game's reality invasion began. In the world of Vision, a player can normally field 3 pets, but by using Beast Mastery to boost spirit stats, one could control hundreds. More importantly, a possessed pet can provide up to 45% of its total attributes to the player. Ling Feng spent 60 million gold in Tianyue City to secure a breeding base, hired 30 top-tier trainers, and began a frantic egg-opening spree. 100 colorful eggs were opened all at once. While no mythical beasts appeared, he did pull 6 pet group banners and 4 epic tier pets. Ling Feng placed the perfect quality pets into the base for cultivation after binding each one to himself. Then, he carefully selected 3 epic tier pets to give to Su Wanting, including a tank, a warrior, and a mage, perfectly fixing her weakness in solo damage output. As for Ling Feng himself, he chose 2 divine pets focused on survival and control. One was the Snow Girl, a high magic control type, with ice stasis survival skills and immunity to negative status effects. The other was the Flying Mouse, an assassin pet with terrifying speed. Once possessed, this would allow Ling Feng, a wind mage, to truly become a man as swift as the wind. With the pets settled, he began identifying those 2,000 sets of level 100 handmade gear. After half an hour of work, his luck surged, yielding 8 9-star pieces. Though the base stats were underwhelming, Ling Feng used the Tiangong crystals to extract perfect attributes, personally crafting gear for Su Wanting. He created the Red Moon Belt and the Sacrificial Cloak with maxed out traits, boosting her healing effectiveness by 30%. This allowed her to achieve the ultimate build for a priest. It was a complete success. With the equipment support, all her skill levels reached 13, a stat line that wouldn't lose out even to the most elite players. Just then, Su Wanting logged back in. Ling Feng handed over the top-tier divine gear and the pets, and the two prepared to continue grinding. Su Wanting softly asked if, after reaching level 100, he could take her to explore the Heavenly Palace. Ling Feng dotingly agreed. And as we often see, surprises tend to appear when one least expects them. While digging through 500 premium treasure maps, Ling Feng found 10 eternal crystals and something far more rare, a fragment of the God-slaying array. This was a grade 9 city defense formation capable of trapping even celestial gods. Ling Feng knew its strategic value immediately. He contacted Zhang Chunlin at once, issuing a strict order to acquire the remaining components at any cost. Deep down, he had a feeling about this particular find. He sensed that this god-slaying array might become Tianyue City's ultimate trump card in the future. After a long day of grinding, Ling Feng was about to log off when a knock sounded at his door. His roommate, Bai Shui, wanted Ling Feng to accompany him to school the next day to get familiar with the campus. To Shui, this was just a normal favor between roommates. After all, he had even offered to lend Ling Feng money before. However, the reborn Ling Feng only felt a cold irony. In an era where modern weapons couldn't stop a level 80 black dragon, and where technological civilization was about to be torn apart by a single arrow, going to school was, to be perfectly honest, a complete waste of life. He knew only the magic from the game could stop the coming disaster. And so, right in front of Bai Shui, Ling Feng called his instructor to request a 3-day leave, declaring he would only return to campus after the game's invasion began. The next morning, April 16th, only 12 days remained until the end of the world. Ling Feng took a moment to inventory his growing assets within the game. Tianyue City was now packed with resources from 100 warehouses, over 90 high-tier pets, and 3 massive NPC legions of knights, warriors, and mages. We could say his preparations were reaching a peak. His next objective was singular: clear the new dungeon and fully equip his pets with the best gear available. Upon logging in, Ling Feng joined Su Wanning's party. Shuima and the Petite by Shi were already there, having waited quite some time for the group to assemble. While they waited for the final member, Zhang Chunlin, to log on, Ling Feng learned some rather dramatic news about the situation back in the real world. Apparently, their class group chat had exploded. The instructor had singled out Ling Feng for his long-term absence, criticizing him in front of everyone. His old rival, Yi Tenglong, took the opportunity to mock him mercilessly, even threatening to report Ling Feng to the Academic Affairs Office. Ling Feng intended to ignore it, but he discovered that Zhang Chunlin, usually a timid IT guy, had transformed into a digital warrior, taking on the entire crowd single-handedly. When Yi Tenglong tried to use his brother's reputation as a local thug to threaten him, Zhang Chunlin didn't flinch. He fired back, saying that if he had a brother on the streets, then he had an army of 3,000 internet trolls ready to make both brothers famous on the national news headlines by morning. He was certainly a loyal friend worth trusting. As for Yi Tenglong, Ling Feng didn't even blink. In his memory, the man was already a ghost of the past. In Ling Feng's memory, Yi Tenglong was one of the first cowards to sell his account and flee the game. In 12 days, when the worlds overlap, these so-called local thugs and rich heirs won't even be considered ants in front of Ling Feng and his transcendent power. Not long after, Zhang Chunlin logged on, and our 5-person team was finally assembled. Their objective was the new Heavenly Palace dungeon, titled The Chaos of the Heavenly Palace, a grand narrative detailing the tragic downfall of a celestial realm. The dungeon blended Eastern and Western fantasy, featuring the Southern Heaven Gate and 12 divine temples, all woven into a complex system of scheming deities. The giant ape king, who had been repeatedly defeated in the previous Southern Gate dungeon, made a return here, now upgraded to level 120. With 2 million health points and enough attack power to instantly kill Ling Feng, he wasn't alone. 11 other demons, including Balrogs and Hydras, joined the fray. It was a truly staggering scene of carnage. Once the team gathered, the guild leader Shuima suggested they start on normal difficulty just to get a feel for things. Ling Feng didn't object. After all, even a normal difficulty clear offered supreme treasure chests and decent rewards. At this point, their team composition was top tier. We see the server's #1 win mage, Ling Feng, joined by the top priest Su Wanting and the third-ranked warrior, the petite and delicate by Shui. Rounding them out was Shuima, an elementalist with a hidden class. Only the childhood friend, Zhang Chunlin, lagged slightly behind in terms of raw power. As a knight, his full set of 9-star handmade gear was worth less than $1 million, but with Ling Feng and his divine pigbird pet dealing terrifying damage, it wasn't an issue. They cruised through the normal difficulty. The pigbird not only displayed high intelligence, but also contributed 26% of the team's total damage. This was quite a blow to Bai Shi's pride. As a top-tier warrior, his output was actually lower than a pet's. He immediately vowed to buy 10,000 colorful eggs, just to hatch an even stronger divine beast. Zhang Chunlin remarked that the market for these eggs was currently low due to high consumption, but Shi didn't care. He and Su Wanting had a simple mindset. They just wanted to enjoy the game. Soon, the team moved on to hard difficulty, and Ling Feng unleashed his full power. He led the team at a blistering pace. While the others were busy clearing mobs, Bai Shi actually started opening his eggs right there in the middle of the dungeon. Half an hour later, right in front of the level 128 king, a divine light suddenly descended. Shi had actually hatched a mythical-grade pet, the celestial dog, Tingo. Seeing its stats, the entire team was ecstatic. It had an SS+ rating and incredibly high physical attack growth. It possessed 3 god-tier skills: Unyielding Will, Ancient Bloodline, and Frenzied Devour. For every 1% of health lost, its attack and defense increased. With a built-in 50% health boost and 30% lifesteal, it was, to be honest, perfectly tailor-made for a melee god of war. It was a peerless brawler, yet in a truly comical twist. Bai Shi's first reaction upon seeing this divine beast was one of pure disgust. Having been bitten by a dog as a child, she had a lingering psychological trauma. She would have preferred a cat over the celestial dog. Ling Feng joked about trading it for a flying mouse, which only prompted a more miserable scream from Shui, as she was terrified of mice too. Despite the laughter, they successfully cleared 2 rounds, leaving Ling Feng with 2 supreme treasure chests in hand. Seeing Shui's incredible luck, even Shuima felt tempted. She theorized that because so many influencers were consuming eggs right now, the drop rate for divine beasts had spiked. Ling Feng, in high spirits, announced their goal for the day. They wouldn't stop until they had farmed 8 supreme treasure chests. Who could have guessed that a top-tier, high-stakes dungeon would turn into a casual unboxing site for our team? Under Ling Feng's lead, they swept through hard and nightmare difficulties with ease, and the pile of supreme treasure chests continued to grow. Zhang Chunlin eagerly joined the unboxing craze, but luck, it seems, was simply not on his side. After opening 50 eggs and getting only one legendary, he painfully vowed never to spend another cent. Meanwhile, Xiaoma and Bai Shui, our two wealthy ladies, took advantage of the pre-merger market crash to snatch up thousands more colorful eggs. At this moment, the rate of resource consumption in Fantasy Era was staggering, as players everywhere poured out 20 years of savings. This massive burn rate actually pushed the probability of high-tier pets to a new all-time high. Stop opening eggs and focus, Ling Feng commanded as the team stepped into the most terrifying challenge yet. Hell difficulty. This version of the Heavenly Palace was eerie. The first 11 bosses, once their physical bodies were destroyed, turned into spirits and fled toward the final map. Shuyi and Xiaoma were puzzled, wondering if the bosses were simply unkillable at this level, but Ling Feng sensed an opportunity. This was likely a new mechanic unlocked after level 120. Before the final throne, the grand finale began. The giant ape king brutally devoured the souls of the other 11 demons. His health instantly ballooned to a staggering 3 million as he transformed into a 100-meter giant. Looking like a living King Kong, a single basic attack from him stripped 50,000 health from Zhang Chunlin. This terrifying, defense-ignoring damage made everyone feel the cold breath of death. At the critical moment, Ling Feng showed his true colors as a regressor. He ordered everyone not to draw, aggro, or use crowd control. Instead, they were to find a massive throne, stand on it, and only use attack skills. The priest wasn't even allowed to heal. Though Bai Shui was completely bewildered, she followed orders. Then, a miraculous scene unfolded. Because the throne triggered a specific collision bug, the massive giant ape king was completely unable to lock onto any targets on the thrones, wandering aimlessly between the 5 seats like a headless fly. With the help of this bug, the boss with 3 million health became a sitting duck. As the ape king crashed down, server-wide announcements began flashing frantically. Ling Feng's team didn't just secure the first clear, they also obtained an incredibly precious rare profession treasure. But what truly shocked the entire player base was what came next. The system immediately announced the opening of the level 120 soul cultivation system and the launch of the reputation system. The world channel erupted into a total frenzy. Some players cursed the developers for creating a money pit right before the shutdown, while others leaked that Ling Feng had actually mortgaged his house just to play. Facing a screen full of ridicule and confusion, Ling Feng watched his experience bar nearing level 120 with a cold smirk. To be honest, he expected nothing less from them. At a time when most people had already given up hope, only he knew that this so-called soul cultivation was the true capital needed to face the coming apocalypse. Ling Feng became famous overnight, but not because of his skills in Fantasy Era. Instead, he became known as the world's biggest fool. With the game announcing a permanent shutdown and no compensation, Ling Feng's mysterious decision to sell his property and borrow millions to top up his account was leaked. This revelation by his classmates instantly ignited public opinion, turning him into a viral sensation for all the wrong reasons. The online comments were almost entirely negative, and Ling Feng was quickly labeled as brain-dead, mentally challenged, and the ultimate sucker of the gaming world. However, in an era where traffic is king, even negative fame is still fame. Ling Feng soon received a flood of interview invitations from various media outlets. The school's Joke Stop program wanted to interview him. Longhai TV's Modern Youth segment invited him to record, and even the Quayin platform reached out. Quayin even offered a signing bonus of 800,000 to bring him on board. When a health supplement brand mockingly asked him to endorse their brain-boosting pills, Ling Feng simply hung up. He did, however, accept the contracts from the TV station and Quayin headquarters. Meanwhile, the class group chat had completely boiled over with the news. Yi Tenglong and the others, who had been sarcastically mocking Ling Feng, turned green with envy upon learning he was going to be on national television. Even his childhood friend Zhang Chunlin, who had a crush on Jiang Tingting, managed to get an interview invite through Ling Feng's connections, making him shout with joy. Su Wanting, however, was filled with worry when she called. She assumed Ling Feng was only agreeing to these interviews because he was desperate for money. She feared he was willing to act like a circus monkey for the entire nation to laugh at just to pay off his debts. Ling Feng knew the apocalyptic crisis was imminent, but since he couldn't reveal the secret of his rebirth, he planned to claim he had experienced a prophetic dream. He planned to use the national broadcast as a platform to issue a final warning to the public and the military, while once again reminding Zhang Chunlin of their mission. The in-game acquisitions could not stop. Even if prices continued to plummet, they had to sweep the market, especially for that rare God-slaying formation fragment. He was willing to pay 10 times the market price to secure it, as these materials were his ultimate capital for the coming upheaval. Wednesday, the day of the recording, finally arrived. Our story continues as Ling Feng, labeled the world's biggest fool, didn't appear destitute, as everyone expected. In fact, he seemed remarkably composed. He calmly stepped into his roommate Bai Shui's private car. Before leaving, his childhood friend Zhang Chunlin called to report on their progress. A large number of gaming studios were dumping supreme saturation items on the market. Ling Feng's eyes lit up, as these were core materials for top-tier pet equipment. Faced with a fixed price of 1,000 per unit, Ling Feng showed the cold ruthlessness of a seasoned businessman. He offered 600 and not a penny more. He told them to take it or leave it, knowing the items would be worthless once the servers closed. To him, this wasn't just about hoarding goods. It was a stepping stone to recruit elite gold farmers. Bai Shi, watching Ling Feng throw money around so aggressively, couldn't help but ask if he had some inside information. Ling Feng simply laughed it off, keeping the secret of his rebirth to himself. However, as the car left the complex, they were blocked by Yi Tenglong and his brother. Yi Tenglong's brother, a local thug named Yi Tinghu, stood by as Tenglong arrogantly demanded that Ling Feng repay his debts immediately. Facing the heavily tattooed Tenghu, Ling Feng remained unervingly calm. He pushed away the stun baton Shi offered and stepped out of the car alone. He saw through the situation instantly. Tenglong was simply jealous of his viral fame, while Tenghu was worried his famous debtor might skip out on the bill. Ling Feng ignored the shouting Tenglong entirely and presented Tenghu with an ultimate temptation. He offered to repay the loan in 1 month instead of 3. Furthermore, he promised an extra million in interest. He gave Tenghu a choice: listen to his brother and cause trouble, or walk away with a massive profit. In the face of such profit, family loyalty proved to be quite fragile. Tenghu didn't hesitate for long, demanding that Ling Feng sign a new IOU for 3 million on the spot. Ling Feng complied and even took a moment to mock Tenglong, calling him nothing more than a dog meant to take hits for others. Tenglong was absolutely livid. When Tenglong tried to get physical, Tenghu, determined to protect his new cash cow, delivered a sharp backhand slap to his own brother's face. He forced a humiliated Tenglong to bow and apologize, calling Ling Feng Brother Feng. Ling Feng watched this display with an expressionless face. He drove away, having won this psychological gamble and secured more time to prepare. At this moment, he was one step closer to his national address. We find ourselves only half an hour away from the studio where Ling Feng plans to issue his doomsday prophecy. Facing the Yi brothers and that $3 million IOU, Ling Feng signed without a second thought. Inside the car, Bai Shi was utterly baffled, asking if he really intended to pay an extra million just for that slap. Ling Feng simply smiled. Deep down, he knew the Yi brothers wouldn't see a single penny of that money, because by the time he returned from the capital, the world would have changed forever. 2 ordinary men who hadn't inherited any game abilities were destined to become monster fodder. At that point, the IOU would be nothing more than scrap paper. On the way to the television station, Ling Feng advised Shi to go home and stay with his parents. He knew that the game's invasion wasn't just a disaster. It also brought a mystical energy that could cleanse the body, curing all diseases and even regenerating limbs. Meanwhile, in the world of supreme saturation, the update to the soul cultivation system had become the new priority. This system completely overhauled the game's core logic, allowing players to use soul energy to maintain their physical condition and eliminate hunger entirely. Consequently, a new currency called soul crystals replaced gold as the most precious consumable. From common to iridescent grades, the exchange rates were staggering. A single iridescent crystal could cost 100 million gold coins. Knowing their true value, Ling Feng immediately ordered Zhang Chunlin to exploit the current exchange rate and sweep the market for gold. His goal was to stockpile 10,000 iridescent crystals, a fortune large enough to buy several small countries within the game. A little later, Ling Feng stepped into the Longhai TV station to record Youth of Today. To be honest, the recording process was anything but smooth, as Ling Feng openly addressed the Dragon Country military on air, demanding they enter the game to strategize. The director was so terrified by his bold statements that he broke into a cold sweat and briefly paused the recording. Ling Feng, however, remained remarkably firm, asking what would happen if his dream were true. He even offered to take full responsibility. Ultimately, the director chose to compromise, and the recording was completed. We move forward to April 22nd at the Longhai City Airport waiting lounge. With only 5 days left until the invasion, Ling Feng put on his helmet to log in while waiting for his flight. By now, thanks to the iridescent crystals, his soul cultivation level was firmly ranked first on the server. He had not only obtained 3 sets of god-tier pet gear, but his magic attack power had officially surpassed the 100,000 mark. What surprised him most was a hidden class certificate dropped in the Hell Dungeon, the Skywalker. This was an incredibly versatile and high-difficulty class. Once he changed jobs, he would be able to engage in close-quarters combat or cast spells from a distance. It truly offered total freedom on the battlefield. Looking at the hidden class certificate in his hand, Ling Feng found himself hesitating for a moment about the transition. Becoming a Skywalker meant he would have to say goodbye to professional class sets and rely solely on self-crafted gear. However, the growth potential of this class was simply unprecedented, with every attribute rating reaching S rank or higher. Most notably, the agility coefficient was 0.05, exactly 5 times that of a wind mage. This meant that once he changed jobs, he would possess ultimate speed and a versatile mastery of both physical and magical combat. Just then, Su Wanting logged in as well. Since there were 2 rewards for this dungeon, he didn't hesitate to hand her the other hidden priest class certificate, the Light Meditator. After her job change, Wanting unexpectedly triggered an SSS rank difficulty quest, saving the tribe of the Holy Maiden of Light. To be honest, the stakes were massive. Ling Feng glanced at the rewards and was instantly stunned. It didn't just offer a unique mythic-grade weapon, the Scepter of the Holy Maiden. More importantly, owning it allowed one to command the entire Holy Maiden tribe within the game. He knew very well that once the game invaded reality, this would essentially give Wanting an absolutely loyal army of supernatural beings. He decided right then that once his current business was finished, he would definitely help her complete this quest. Before heading to the capital, Zhang Chunlin called him, his voice brimming with pure ecstasy. He hadn't only regained his confidence in front of his crush, Jiang Yuyu, but had also managed to sweep the market for a batch of level 120 high-grade identification scrolls. The screenshots he sent completely solidified Ling Feng's resolve to change classes. Level 120 handmade gear wasn't just powerful, it also featured unprecedented extra skill slots and gem sockets. He immediately ordered Chunlin to spare no expense, even if it meant selling everything, to sweep up every gem on the server. As he boarded his flight to the capital, he had no idea that Longhai TV, fearing the implications, had already reported his recorded footage to the military. In a secret base, personnel were repeatedly analyzing his prophecy. While most felt the game invading reality was pure fantasy, the veteran General Lu Quan possessed a different kind of vision. He knew that the Star Stone, which served as the game's carrier, had a mysterious origin and technology centuries ahead of Earth. Since it cost very little, he felt it was better to believe it might be true than to ignore it entirely. A wise precaution, one might say. General Lu finally made the call to allocate a modest budget, ordering local garrisons to send a reinforced company into supreme saturation to create accounts. If Ling Feng could see this scene, he would be shocked to discover that the dignified General Lu Quan bore a striking resemblance to his in-game partner, Su Wanting. The gears of fate had begun to turn violently at the intersection of reality and illusion. At the capital's Kuaishou headquarters, Ling Feng began the first live online interview of his life. And this is where we see his influence truly begin to take hold. The live stream for the internet's most famous sucker had just begun, and viewers already exceeded 100,000. Sitting across from Ling Feng was the host, Luo Li, an influencer with 30 million followers. Under the heavy filters and thick makeup, Luo Li appeared sweet and charming, but Ling Feng remained completely indifferent, his heart unmoved. Faced with sharp questions about why he sold his house and spent millions on a dying game, he calmly replied that it was all for a dream, to prepare for a world about to change forever. He even made a shocking statement during the broadcast. He announced that his Mage God set, bought for over $1 million, was now for sale for $3 million. Those who believed him would buy it, he claimed. The comments section exploded instantly, filled with mockery and insults calling him a scammer. Seeing his popularity peak, the platform officials immediately arranged for him to try livestream selling. They clearly had bad intentions, pushing high-profit, low-quality products onto him, hoping to exploit his remaining value as a disposable asset. To be honest, he didn't hesitate to agree, as he felt absolutely no psychological pressure. He knew that once the great change arrived, these buyers would never see the day their orders were delivered. Meanwhile, he desperately needed the funds to complete his final harvest of in-game resources. After 2 days of frantic selling, he had managed to rake in $8 million in profit. Just then, Shuemo actually called him. He really intended to spend $3 million to buy that Mage God set. With a smile, he said it wasn't just nostalgia, but a way to support a friend. When the news reached the live stream, it triggered another massive internet earthquake. The haters were furious, yet they had to admit this world was becoming more surreal than a novel. On the evening of April 26th, Ling Feng returned to his home in Longhai City with ample funds. There were only 24 hours left until the game invaded reality. He immediately put on his helmet and entered the game. The crafting of level 120, God-tier handmade gear, his Skywalker class change, and Su Wanting's SSS rank hidden quest all had to be completed within this single day. Outside, the neon lights of the real world remained brilliant, but inside his gaming pod, he gripped his weapon, waiting quietly for that moment to arrive. To craft the ultimate 9-star handmade equipment, he exhausted nearly all of his material reserves. He didn't just mobilize Zhang Chuanlin's studio to place orders in every major city. He also borrowed $6 million from Baishui. Combined with his earnings, he swept up every gold coin on the market. Orders for 10,000 sets of level 120 gear were scheduled for tomorrow morning. This was his final gamble. On the morning of April 27th, the moment he opened his eyes, he sensed something was wrong. Longhai, a city near the equator, this coastal city, usually warm and tropical, was suddenly buried under a heavy snowfall. Outside his window, dark clouds loomed over the city as a biting wind cut like a knife. The news was filled with reports of freak weather, a super tsunami hitting the west, and fist-sized hail falling across the east. Even more bizarrely, global warships were frozen solid in the middle of the ocean, and every missile on Earth had become a dud overnight. Science was collapsing, and myth was about to descend. He immediately logged into the game. His mailbox was overflowing with 60,000 pieces of equipment sent by Zhang Chunlin. Out of 10,000 handmade sets, fewer than 5 were 9-star masterpieces. Holding his breath, he used the Heavenly Palace crystals to reset the stats repeatedly. 20 minutes later, the entire server witnessed the birth of a level 120 mythic-grade handmade set. Without a moment's hesitation, he completed his Skywalker class change. This hidden profession, which normally forbade dual-path cultivation, now possessed terrifying stats thanks to his god-tier gear. His mythic weapon, Heavenly Secret, didn't just boost all his skill levels. It was also embedded with the Bloodlust gem skill. And as for the belt, it possessed a unique trait known as, well, we'll see that in action soon enough. Most absurdly, his movement speed, boosted by agility coefficients and equipment traits, had reached a staggering 234 yards per second. This meant he could dash over 200 meters in a single second, twice as fast as a racing car at full speed. He opened his newly mastered skill, Super Slide. Reading the description, which stated that damage increases by 30% for every 100 yards of speed, he let out a cold, knowing smile. Now, even a basic level 1 slide would unleash enough double damage to drive any opponent to utter despair. Outside, the snow fell heavier and heavier, almost as if the world were holding a funeral for the civilization that was about to pass away. To be honest, the style of this profession felt a bit off. It was essentially a super-powered rogue build. Aside from the sneak attacks and crowd control, even high-damage ultimate moves like Enchanted Half-Moon Slash carried that terrifying bonus where the faster he moved, the higher the damage became. But that wasn't even the most broken part. The true core of the Skywalker lay in his ability to learn the competitive skills of most other classes. In the City Lord's warehouse, he sifted through the skill books Zhang Chunlin had collected for him. He carefully selected two. The first was Heart Energy Overkill. This was a nightmare for any single target. It delayed damage calculation while stacking Heartburst layers, finally detonating for double pure damage. This meant that even if his opponent was a massive tank, once he stacked 30 layers of Heartburst, that final explosion would be enough to make them vanish from the face of the earth. The second was 7-Star Convergence, an elite assassin's escape skill involving 7 consecutive teleports. Each jump left him briefly invincible, a fatal advantage for a Skywalker who could now output damage while remaining completely untouchable. By now, his equipment score had surpassed the second-place player, Shuema, by 18,000 points, but he knew it wasn't enough. We see a global ranking list suddenly appear, where only the top 100 players are scored. He sat at the very top with a perfect 100. He understood that this list would determine how much power they could retain when the game invaded reality, and whether their stats would be nerfed. As soon as Su Wanting logged in, he handed over the level 120 mythic handmade set he had prepared. Her gear began to glow with a divine light. Only when her score climbed to second place did he finally breathe a sigh of relief. Next, he gathered Zhang Chunlin, Shuema, and Baishu. It was time to take Su Wanting to complete the unique SSS rank quest, saving the Holy Maiden clan. In the voice chat, the atmosphere was heavy. Shuema's voice trembled as she reported that massive hail was already killing people in the north. He calmly told them to look closer. He pointed out that such extreme weather was common in the game, and urged them to check the international news across the firewall. They would find that the dream he mentioned during his livestream was becoming reality. For a moment, the channel fell into a deathly silence. Everyone began frantically refreshing news feeds, watching missiles fail, satellites lose control, and tsunamis swallow cities. They all understood the truth. Tom was running out for the old world. Zhang Chunlin, though confused, felt that following the boss was the only way to survive. While shouting enthusiastically, Zhang Chunlin spent money like water to boost his own ranking. The team then set off for the Temple of Light. April 27th, the final afterglow of civilization. In this fading light, they would seize the last remnants of power before the end. Only a few hours remained before the official game servers would shut down forever. Success meant the absolute loyalty of the Holy Maiden clan. On the rankings, he still held the top spot with a perfect score of 100. This was his guarantee for a full power inheritance tomorrow. Under his urging, Zhang Chunlin had also pushed his score up to 93. With everything ready, the 5-man team entered the quest location, the Land of Exile. To be honest, the place looked like a living hell. As soon as they landed, a massive earthworm burst from the ground, its 3-meter-wide maw dripping with a foul, nauseating rot. The sight was so repulsive that Baishu almost vomited right then and there. Inside a hollowed-out withered tree, we find the survivors of the Holy Maiden clan, women with long golden hair who immediately kneel before Su Wanting. They address her as the God-minded one, revealing they were imprisoned here by the gods to serve as food for the level 150 world boss, the Earth Dragon King. The Holy Maiden clan has a unique constitution. With the holy fruit, they can produce all-female offspring, and we see over 10,000 of them hiding in this wasteland. This means if the quest succeeds, Su Wanting will command a transcendent army of 10,000, but to save them, they must first kill the Earth Dragon King. The monster's true form is 100 meters tall, a sight so maddening it could break a man's sanity, especially as it begins spraying foul rot everywhere. He had Zhang Chunlin quickly procure 5 sets of ninja gear with masks to block the stench, and only then did the fully equipped team charge into the fray. Zhang Chunlin shouted that this was the first time he regretted playing a knight, yet he closed his eyes and rushed forward to draw the monster's aggro. In his ultimate state, the protagonist's speed soared to 400 knots as his moon-slicing strike landed two terrifying damage numbers directly on the boss. One hit for 220,000, another for 110,000. He keenly noticed the monster had high magic defense but relatively low physical armor. Using the Skywalker's ghostly speed to dodge the tail, he unleashed a flurry of soul-burst marks and empowered stuns from the rear for a full minute. After circling the massive beast and stacking 30 layers of starburst, he triggered a violent detonation that caused the Dragon King's health bar to evaporate. 1 million health points, a full third of its life, vanished instantly, causing the beast to let out a desperate roar as it opened its maw to release a swarm. Countless small earthworms crawled out, attempting to drown the team in a sea of insects, but he simply sneered and activated his belt's forbidden spell. In a miracle instant, all of his skill cooldowns were refreshed, including that lethal soul burst. To be honest, the Dragon King never stood a chance. He declared the monster's end had arrived, marking what would be humanity's final great battle within the virtual world. Despite its size, the Earth Dragon King was little more than a glorified queen bee, and its spitting attacks were useless. In under 2 minutes, it was over. The beast collapsed with a thunderous crash, dropping leather materials and, most importantly, the key quest item, the Scepter of the Holy Maiden of Light. The moment Su Wanting grasped the scepter, a shockwave tore through the land of exile, and 10,000 holy maidens emerged from the trees. As holy light pierced the heavens, we see the High Priestess, Kong Yen, suddenly skyrocket in power until she reached level 180. She had stepped into the so-called Third Realm, and from her, he learned a truth that would overturn everything players thought they knew about level 120. We learned that level 120 is merely the beginning, as levels are nothing more than containers for the soul. Only through reincarnation can one break the level cap. This allows the soul to reach the divine realm, or even the supreme celestial realm. With time running out, he had Su Wanting settle the Holy Maiden clan in Sky Moon City. Meanwhile, he pried a forbidden cultivation shortcut from Kong Yen, the act of devouring souls. It was a dangerous path, to say the least. Kong Yen warned that devouring monster souls would breed inner demons, but with no time left, he charged alone into the chaos of the Heavenly Palace. He entered a state of violent harvesting. The moment he crushed and swallowed the first soul fragment, the system notification brought him a sense of wild exhilaration. The sound was music to his ears, confirming his gamble was paying off. He surged to the 5th stage, gaining a massive boost to all attributes and 10 precious skill points. His attribute panel was now glowing with a golden light. His soul had truly ascended, yet a faint unease lingered in his heart. A server-wide announcement revealed the shutdown was happening earlier than in his past life. It was an hour ahead of schedule. Perhaps his own actions, the butterfly effect in full swing, had accelerated the merging of the two worlds. At 10:50 p.m., he sent Su Wanting one final message. No matter what happens after logging out, call him immediately. He wasn't taking any chances. Then, at exactly 11 o'clock, the game screen went instantly dark. Everything was pitch black for a heartbeat. Suddenly, a crisp phoenix cry echoed in his room. He turned to see the vermilion bird landing on his headboard, its wings flickering with real flames. The flying squirrel nuzzled his arm, while the snow girl stood guard like a beautiful ice sculpture. He looked down at his hands in disbelief. The heavy mythic set was now perfectly equipped on his body, and every muscle teemed with an overwhelming, transcendent power. Outside, the world had descended into chaos, with neighbors' screams echoing through the air. He gripped his weapon, Tianji, with a cold, knowing smile. The game had finally invaded reality. The transition was complete. He expected Su Wanting to be the first to call, but it was Zhang Chunlin. The man was panicking, begging for help at the school. He couldn't find Yu, and a level 100 monster had appeared. Even as a knight, Zhang Chunlin couldn't hold the line alone. Chunlin roared through tears, his voice nearly drowned out by the thunderous collapse of buildings in the background. Lin Feng sighed, knowing he had to push his friend to hold on. He told him that as long as it wasn't a boss, he could handle it, and to protect their mentors and classmates until he arrived. Immediately after, Su Wanting called. Her voice was trembling as she realized his warnings had actually come true. He calmly reassured her, telling her to stay put and not move from her home. The world map had completely changed, rendering satellite navigation useless. He warned her not to wander off until he could pinpoint Sky Moon City's new location and come for her. After hanging up, we see him receive news of Bai Shiyi's desperate situation. She was leading the Mahai City garrison in a brutal struggle against sea monsters. There was no more time for talk. He smashed through his window, leaping out into a neighborhood that had become a hunting ground for hundreds of griffins. The monsters were swarming the basketball court, tearing through everything in a frenzied bloodlust. The sight of the carnage made his blood boil with a cold, righteous fury. He commanded the Vermilion Bird and Snow Girl to protect the civilians while he, wielding the divine weapon Tianji, dove straight into the fray. Every swing of his blade was met with the agonizing wails of griffins. The Vermilion Bird breathed out soul-searing flames that instantly lit up the night sky over the complex. Meanwhile, the Snow Girl became a living blizzard, freezing every monster around the basketball court into solid ice sculptures. To be honest, it was a beautiful, if terrifying, sight. After saving the crowd, he didn't wait for their apologies, turning into a streak of light as he and his pets raced toward the university. Longhai University was already a field of ruins. The military units stationed there were fighting to the death, but most had only inherited level 70 powers. Against level 100 monsters, the casualties were devastating. Zhang Chunlin, mounted on a glowing warhorse, used a taunt skill to draw the attention of dozens of beasts. He screamed Jiang Yuyu's name into the chaos, but then the earth began to tremble violently. A massive shadow loomed over the campus. A 100-meter-tall dark demon dragon, a level 80 boss, leveled the teaching building with ease. The survivors in the gymnasium fell into utter despair. Yi Tenglong, that coward, was literally wetting himself with fear while simultaneously cursing Jiang Tingting and blaming Lin Feng for their predicament. He whined that since Lin Feng knew the invasion was coming and grew so strong, he was obligated to save them, which, naturally, was a ridiculous thing to say. Suddenly, a crimson streak of fire tore through the sky as Lin Feng's voice descended coldly from above the dragon. He told Yi Tenglong his money was for his own life, not for trash. He ordered the Vermilion Bird to burn that oversized worm to a crisp. Just as Yi Tenglong was continuing his pathetic rant, the bird's flames erupted. The divine light of the Vermilion Bird's flames illuminated the entire scene as Lin Feng hovered on trembling wings before the 100-meter-tall dark demon dragon. Chunlin stared in disbelief, shouting that his friend could actually fly, but Lin Feng simply replied that it was a basic pet possession skill. The dark demon dragon let out a world-shaking roar. It was the very beast that killed him in his past life, but now, it was merely a pile of experience points. He activated an enhanced thrust, and the divine weapon Tianji pierced the dragon's eye like a falling star before he used his extreme speed to vanish. Moving at 400 yards per second, he circled behind the beast, landing a perfect combo of shield and sneak attacks while the dragon's breath missed him entirely. With a final, terrifying burst from his twin bows, the 100-meter behemoth crashed to the ground. He then skillfully harvested its wings, eyes, and claws. He stored the loot in his ring, though he noted with slight regret that the dragon's level was too low to produce a soul form. He then turned to Chunlin. He ordered Chunlin to lead the military in escorting the students while he cleared the path, slaughtering every monster in their way as they raced toward the north. The planet was expanding violently, its surface area increasing 100-fold as new lands rose from nothing, and we see Sky Moon City standing silently ahead. Inside the convoy, Yi Tenglong was still shouting nonsense about how Lin Feng owed him money and was obligated to save him. To be honest, it was pathetic. Chunlin laughed in pure frustration, immediately transferring 3 million to the man and telling him to take his filthy money and get out. In this new era where order had collapsed and strength was everything, money had become useless. Chunlin tossed Yi Tenglong out like a common stray. As the man landed among the circling monsters, the students finally realized that neither law nor gold could save them now, only raw power mattered. We return to the gates of Sky Moon City, where the cat girl Achi and her knights knelt on one knee to welcome their city lord. The 100,000 refugees behind him were utterly stunned. His previous multi-million-dollar investments had secured the only steel fortress in this wasteland. He immediately had the high priestess, Kong Yin, reach through the void to rescue Su Wanting and her family from the surrounding monsters. In less than a minute, Su Wanting appeared and embraced him tightly, ignoring everyone's stares as moonlight bathed the walls of their new home. This place had become the only sanctuary for miles, but the commander of the rear guard, Long Lin, arrived with a suffocating report. He informed the city lord that Longhai City had completely fallen, and millions of monsters were now converging on Sky Moon City from all sides. Commander Long Lin gripped his military communicator tightly as he delivered the news that the entire region was being swallowed by the darkness. Global military headquarters were being attacked one after another as the planet fell into paralysis, and the once prosperous cities began to drift apart as the world expanded. They had become isolated islands. Su Wanting gripped Lin Feng's hand, her eyes filled with worry for her grandfather, General Lu Quan, who was still at the Jiangling base. Communication was impossible. Looking at the 100,000 refugees who had just entered the city, Lin Feng coldly announced to the crowd that Sky Moon City was a place of freedom. Anyone could stay or leave, but those who stayed had to follow his orders. He declared Zhang Chunlin the vice city lord, meaning Chunlin's word was now law. No one would stop those who wished to go, but once they stepped outside the gates, their lives were their own responsibility. In this era of collapse, there was no room for hesitation. He appointed Chunlin to lead the 3 major legions to guard the city, while he himself had to face a far more terrifying threat that was emerging. A distress signal had arrived from Bai Shui. Zombies had appeared in Mahai City. Intelligence from Shui Mo also confirmed that a level 110 necromancer boss was rising. The monster was busy transforming the living into an army of the dead. Lin Feng turned to the two elders, Kong Yin and Kong Lin, and offered an irresistible bargain. If they helped rescue General Liu, he would grant the Saintis clan their own territory and unlimited access to Sky Moon City's trial tower. A fair trade, all things considered. With the deal struck, Kong Yin took Su wanting to find the general, while Lin Feng sprouted his wings and flew directly toward the chaos of Mahai City. If the zombie virus created by the Lion Insect King were to spread, Sky Moon City would be doomed. As he entered the ruins of Mahai, the scene was devastating. Everywhere he looked, there were broken walls and walking corpses with vacant eyes, their throats emitting high-pitched, piercing screeches that echoed through the streets. Meanwhile, on a ruined rooftop in the city center, Bai Shui was trapped. Despite being a Valkyrie, she was being betrayed by 3 of her own teammates. Du Li, Wang Jin, and Chen Yi. These 3 were notorious, desperate ones from the game, scoundrels who specialized in murdering others for their wealth. They laughed, noting that the level 120 boss was weakened and the beautiful girl was injured, meaning all her top-tier equipment would soon be theirs. The psychopath named Wang Jin lunged toward Bai Shui with a sneer. She leaned against her companion, Tiando, struggling to resist, but she was at her absolute limit. Lin Feng's voice rang out coldly from the shadows of the alley, mocking the insects who had targeted him in the game and now dared to show their faces in reality. He stepped forward slowly, dressed in his elegant white spring rain outfit. With the divine weapon Tianji in hand, he was flanked by his pets, the vermilion bird and the snow girl. Wang Jin screamed in terror and tried to flee, but the snow girl instantly used her freezing abilities to lock him in place. To be honest, he never stood a chance. The vermilion bird's consecutive fireballs then blasted him until he was coughing up blood. Seeing the tide turn, the 3 cowards desperately retreated into the zombie horde. As the cowards fled toward their nest, Lin Feng didn't bother chasing them. Instead, he teleported behind the mangled level 120 giant boss. A single reinforced sneak attack finished the beast, and as it collapsed, a powerful soul energy tried to escape, but he snatched it midair. He immediately activated his cultivation technique to devour it, and in that moment, the bottleneck within him shattered as his soul reached the 6th stage. His level rose to 121. He had chosen to let those desperate ones go for now, prioritizing the harvest of this weakened level 120 giant. After devouring its soul, he could feel a surge of vital energy crashing through his veins. After all, this was the first true boss soul he had taken in reality. Nearby, Bai Shui was on the verge of death, so Lin Feng decided to use her as a bit of a test subject, feeding her a potent recovery pill. Seeing the effects were slow, he gave her a super recovery pill, and he felt much more relieved as he watched the Valkyrie quickly return to full strength. Next, we see them tear through the streets to hunt the level 70 boss, the Stone Insect King, a creature that was manageable in the game, but a nightmare here. In reality, it could produce an endless supply of zombies. Once it fell, Lin Feng looted a sinister item called the Star of Return. While they fought through the endless nests of monsters, Lin Feng suddenly looked up and saw several figures standing high above the clouds. He felt an inexplicable, heart-stopping pressure from them, a power far exceeding a level 150 boss, just as an ancient terror emerged from the sea. A massive creature of unknown level rose from the waves. Even 100-meter-long giants seemed like mere snacks in its gargantuan maw. Lin Feng grabbed Bai Shui to retreat, but a thunderous roar echoed from the sky, cursing the beast for daring to cross the border and plunder Longling territory. The golden light dissipated to reveal a man in shimmering golden armor holding a spear, descending from the heavens. He was a high official of Longling. This was Jin Chong, the governor of Jinhai province, and to Lin Feng's shock, the ferocious sea demon actually retreated in fear back into the depths. The beast hissed about the end of the divine path as it fled. Just then, 2 familiar lights landed. Su Wanting had arrived with Kong Yin and Kong Lin. They were accompanied by General Liu Quan, now clad in blood-red armor. Upon seeing the 2 elders of the Saintis clan, Governor Jin Chong's demeanor shifted instantly. He became remarkably respectful, and upon learning they were staying in Sky Moon City, he began to look at Lin Feng with newfound interest. It was from Jin Chong that Lin Feng would finally learn the cruel, unvarnished truth about the current state of the world. The planet we once knew as Earth had changed into something far more vast and dangerous than anyone could have ever imagined. In the eyes of Jin Chong, those who were devoured by monsters were merely useless trash who had squandered 20 years of opportunities to grow stronger. Since Lin Feng was the lord of Sky Moon City, the governor formally recognized his status, declaring that from now on, he would be one of Jin Chong's subordinates. Facing a governor of such unfathomable power, Lin Feng understood he had to bow his head for now, though being treated like a mere pawn filled him with silent fury. The world was far larger and darker than he had ever imagined. On the journey back, he began calling Liu Quan grandfather out of newfound respect. He urgently pressed for news on the global situation, and General Liu Quan looked at him with a heavy, somber expression. we see that the planet once known as Earth has been reshaped into a map that is entirely unrecognizable to its former inhabitants. As night fell in the brightly lit hall of the city lord's manor, Lin Feng realized just how absolute this global transformation truly was. To the east, the island nations had completely fallen, while to the north, the great powers were struggling to survive in a state of eternal, bitter cold. The Western powers had turned to scorched earth overnight once their heavy weapons failed. Meanwhile, the Dragon Kingdom had expanded 100-fold. Their region was now part of the Longling territory, ruled by Governor Jin Chong, who looked down on the original humans with nothing but disdain and charity. Bai Shi waved her weapon in frustration, declaring they couldn't just sit and wait for death, while Jin Chong treated them like subhumans. Grandfather Lu Quan nodded in agreement, acknowledging Lin Feng as the city lord and the undisputed strongest among them, whom they would all follow. Their goal was to organize every survivor to endure and find a way to live through these chaotic times, but their planning was soon interrupted. The High Priestess Kong Yin suddenly announced she was taking Su Wanting away, claiming a rare mind seer would only waste her talent among those who hadn't even reached their second job advancement. Her words were harsh, yet she looked at Lin Feng with a strange glint in her eyes, warning him not to be deceived by his own current standing. She explained that Jin Chong valued him not just for the city, but because he was a Heaven Walker, a legendary class seen only once in 10,000 years. While powerful, this status meant that many more traps and assassination plots would follow. Lin Feng was shocked to learn his true potential was so vast. Just as he was processing this, Long Jiang, the commander of the Sky Moon Knights, rushed into the hall to deliver an urgent report. They had discovered an endless mountain range of gold to the west, and even more importantly, a vast soul mountain range to the northwest. Buried beneath it were spiritual veins that produced soul gold stones, essential for soul cultivation. Hearing this, Kong Yin stood up abruptly, her voice filled with urgency. Kong Yin proposed that if Lin Feng could grant 2 mountain peaks to the Saintis clan as their territory, they would form a mutual defense alliance. The Mind Seer could train in the mountains near Sky Moon City, which seemed like a fair trade. Lin Feng immediately led his group out to investigate. As he hovered in the air, gazing down at the endless, shimmering mineral ranges, he felt as though he were looking at a golden empire rising from the ruins. Zhang Chunlin began digging enthusiastically and soon unearthed a sparkling soul gold stone, a treasure of immense value in this new world. Lin Feng turned to Kong Yin and agreed to the deal, though he added a condition. He wanted more than just an alliance. He insisted that his city's elite disciples be allowed to train with her clan, while his own poetry love tower would be fully open to the Saintises. On this first day of the Blue Planet's cataclysm, he now possessed a city and a mine. His stockpiled mythical materials and pills were his greatest assets. He immediately ordered the 3 major legions to occupy the mining area, announcing to everyone that they could now mine for their own future. The city lord's manor would only take a 10% tax, leaving the remaining 90% to the miners, a generous offer, to be sure. Furthermore, they could exchange their or for divine equipment and advanced skills, a revelation that instantly ignited hope among the 100,000 refugees. In this cruel era of interdimensional invasion, Lin Feng intended to use these 2 spirit mines as a lever to spark the rise of humanity. As the rules of Sky Moon City were established, the city transformed into a massive experiment in survival and growth. He wasn't running a charity. He provided housing, mentors, and protection, but the people had to earn their keep through labor and skill. Whether mining or choosing a sub-profession, it was a cold but absolutely fair exchange of resources for survival. That night, at 11 o'clock, several magnificent flying vessels descended upon the city square as Governor Jin Chong returned, accompanied by a woman named Mia. Mia was the president of a powerful chamber of commerce, joined by 8 formidable clan leaders from the other world. She observed Lin Feng with the calculating gaze of a superior, noting that in the entire province, he was the only human to hold a city. During the banquet, Jin Chong finally showed his true colors. He recognized Lin Feng's title and ownership of the mines, but at a steep price. The cost was staggering, a monthly tribute of 5 million ordinary soul gold stones and 50 million gold coins. It was blatant exploitation, yet Lin Feng knew that Sky Moon City currently lacked the leverage to negotiate for anything better. Jin Chong took a slow sip of his wine, telling Lin Feng not to find the price too steep. Sky Moon City sat right in the heart of monster territory. A beast tide was scheduled to strike the city tomorrow morning, but for this price, the governor promised to buy Lin Feng 10 days of peace. It was a development period bought with massive resources. Lin Feng took a deep breath and asked if doubling the tribute would grant him more. He wanted the right to proactively hunt the surrounding world bosses during those 10 days. Jin Chong laughed, finding the young city lord quite clever. The deal was struck. Once those greedy guests departed, Lin Feng immediately summoned Lu Quan, Su Wanting, and Zhang Chunlin to his side. He knew perfectly well that Jin Chong's stability was just an illusion built on exploitation. To these outsiders, they were merely walking ATMs. If they didn't grow stronger in these 10 days, the city would become ruins once the tide hit. He told Chunlin to mobilize the entire city. They would mine by night and level up by day, recruiting 20,000 apprentices to mass-produce equipment. Time, as always, was of the essence. The goal was for the main force to reach level 30 within 10 days. Just then, Bai Shui arrived with some rather troubling news. The snow demon, Han Bingbo, who also held the city, had sent a desperate plea for help. His region had no grace period at all. Lin Feng decided he had to go, not just to save an ally, but to see exactly what this so-called beast tide was made of. He also wanted to uncover the secrets between these interdimensional kingdoms. He asked the High Priestess to delay building their territory for now. He turned to Kong Yin, requesting that the Saintis clan lead his people in a frantic leveling spree in exchange for full access to the city's mines. After securing the home front, he gripped his weapon. Some might think he was soft for letting those elite enemies escape earlier. But faced with a level 120 boss and a breakthrough in his own soul realm, he had to prioritize his own evolution first. In this unpredictable blue planet realm, strength is the only foundation. Before heading to the Ice Kingdom to support the Snow Demon, he had to ensure absolute stability at home. He entrusted the city's defense to Su Wanting, with Bai Shui and old Lu Quan assisting. As for Vice City Lord Zhang Chunlin, he was already buried in work. He had to settle the 100,000 refugees Jin Chang had dumped on them. He also had to organize groups to level up outside. We see those who had lost their homes now forced into the mines and the wilderness. Lin Feng understood that in this digitized reality, hard work was no longer a choice. It was the only way to stay alive. In this world, survival isn't guaranteed, but laziness is a death sentence. Before departing, Lin Feng took one last look at his status panel, noting his soul had reached the 6th stage. After this breakthrough, the advantages of his Skywalker class became truly terrifying. His new skill, the Nine Heavens statue, was a revelation that didn't just offer explosive power. What he valued most was the 3 seconds of absolute invincibility it provided. In a reality where you only have one life, invincibility is essentially a golden ticket to cheat death. Once everything was settled, Lin Feng transformed into a blur of shadow, streaking across the night sky toward the border of the Ice Kingdom. To be honest, he moved faster than most could see. As he passed over a dark, dense forest, flashes of lightning below caught his eye. He suppressed his aura and landed silently upon the treetops to observe the commotion. Below, a young girl who looked like a petite doll was being surrounded by 3 rough-looking men. We see the tension rising as they closed in on their prey. Wang Jin, Chen Yi, and Du Li. Lin Feng's gaze turned cold as he recognized them. It was those persistent, desperate ones again, appearing like a bad, recurring dream. The girl, Lin Xiaoya, looked barely 20, but her lightning spells were surprisingly well practiced. It was clear she had spent a fortune on her skills before the game became reality. She told the scumbags she wasn't afraid of them, though her voice trembled. Despite her fear, the lightning crackling in her hands was very real and very loud. Wang Jin laughed, telling her they wanted her high-grade equipment first, and then they would take care of her delicate self. It was a truly repulsive display of arrogance. He added with a twisted grin that killing her would be a perfect gift for Lin Feng, which, naturally, was the exact moment he should have stopped talking. Lin Feng let out a cold snort and stopped hiding. Just as Wang Jin was savoring his cruel triumph, he felt a sudden, icy chill at the back of his neck. In the instant their forms crossed, the heavenly sword precisely sliced through the man's defenses. A single touch, a single strike, and it was a total one-shot kill. Du Li and Chen Yi were scared out of their wits as Lin Feng stepped slowly from the shadows, his sword dripping. He calmly asked if they were the ones with a surprise for him. They screamed his name in terror and tried to flee in opposite directions. But trying to outrun a Skywalker is, to be perfectly honest, a complete joke. With 2 swift flashes, Du Li stopped breathing and Chen Yi was cut clean in half. As he lay dying, Chen Yi broke into a fit of manic, desperate laughter. He gasped that Lin Feng would never know who their boss was, and that this mysterious leader would kill them all. Lin Feng looked at the corpses with zero emotion. He told himself it didn't matter who their boss was. Anyone blocking his path would share this fate. But as he prepared to leave, Lin Xiaoya let out a high-pitched scream. She shrieked in delight, realizing it was actually Lin Feng, and declared herself his biggest fan. It was a rather sudden shift in tone, to say the least. Before he could even react, she lunged at him like an octopus, wrapping her legs tightly around his waist while sobbing with relief and excitement. As she sobbed about her family's shop, Lin Feng stood there frozen, staring at this self-proclaimed #1 fan who apparently bought 1,000 units of every item in his shop. For the first time, he felt he was facing a problem far more troublesome than a 150-pound monster. Lin Xiaoya, could you please just get down? He patted her head helplessly, but she refused, crying that she had finally found him and was far too scared to let go. And who could blame her, really? Looking at her phone's order page, which was nearly out of battery, he rubbed his temples. With a beast tide approaching this wilderness, he couldn't exactly leave her behind. It seemed his journey to the Ice Kingdom would now include a tag-along. At 6 in the morning, we see them finally reaching the border of the Dragon Bell Kingdom. Behind them, Skyjoy City was finally back on track. But Lin Feng knew that a single isolated city wouldn't be enough for humanity to survive this new world. To endure, the people of Blue Star had to unite. Thus, he decided to cross the Yellow River and head toward Ice City to support his ally, Xuanmu. Along the way, he carried Lin Xiaoya on his back, pushing his mechanical speed to a staggering 500 yards per second. Even so, the expanded world felt impossibly vast. At the border checkpoint, we encounter the guards of the Ice Kingdom for the first time, a group of platinum-armored elves whose beauty was almost otherworldly. The female general, Miao Air, watched him with a gaze full of both majesty and deep suspicion. "Skywalker," she warned, "I hope you are only here to visit a friend." She added that his very existence was a massive problem, a statement that only deepened Lin Feng's doubts. Kong Yin had once mentioned that the Skywalker was a symbol of hope. He wondered why even these otherworldly elves were so wary of his profession. However, he had no time for deep reflection, as the clock was ticking for his friends. By his calculations, Xuanmu's Ice City should be facing the brunt of the beast tide right about now. It was 8 in the morning when Xuanmu stood atop the city walls. She watched as monsters surged below like a black tide. Beside her stood only 600 inheritors who had retained their game powers. The rest were just ordinary people. She reminded her sisters that this wasn't a game anymore. There were no respawns, and falling meant the end. To be honest, the weight of that reality was crushing. Her voice trembled slightly in the cold wind, yet it remained firm. What truly angered her, however, were the elven airships hovering high above the clouds. The elves of the Ice Kingdom looked down on the struggle as if watching a gladiatorial performance, their eyes filled with nothing but cold indifference. They clearly had no intention of helping. The battle erupted instantly, and while the first 10 waves of monsters were low-level enough to handle, things soon escalated. By the 10th wave, a level 80 dark magic dragon appeared. Xuanmu led a desperate charge, using the city's heavy artillery to narrowly slay the beast. But starting from the 11th wave, the level and number of monsters began to grow exponentially, beginning with a flood of level 55 minions. Hordes of monsters slammed into the city walls in relentless waves, causing Ice City's defensive barriers to ripple and flicker. By the 19th wave, the reinforced stone finally began to crack. A massive breach tore open in the wall. Knowing their families and parents were right behind them, the soldiers of Ice City prepared to plug the gap with their own bodies. The military commanders let out a roar that shook the heavens. In this moment of absolute desperation, the soldiers didn't hesitate to leap from the walls to form a human shield. They built a first line of defense out of pure courage, a tragic sight that instantly galvanized everyone. Mages accelerated their chanting, and the priest's healing spells became a blur of motion. But just then, a clap of thunder exploded in the sky. A colossal beast, standing dozens of meters tall and wreathed in crackling purple lightning, came stomping through the mountain rock. It was a level 120 critical thunder beast. Xuanmu couldn't believe her eyes. How could a level 120 boss possibly appear during only the 20th wave? Her face turned deathly pale. She looked up toward the clouds, where the elves were elegantly sipping wine, their lips curled into cruel, mocking smiles. In that instant, Xuanmu realized this wasn't a natural beast tide at all. The elves were manipulating the event from the shadows, intent on turning Ice City into a tomb. She gripped her staff so hard her knuckles turned white, wondering where Lin Feng could be. To be honest, he was her only remaining hope. At that very moment, we see Lin Feng carrying Lin Xiaoya, moving like a bolt of white gold lightning as he skimmed across the surface of the Yellow River. He was advancing at full speed toward Ice City, which was currently teetering on the brink of total collapse. The elf's level 120 puppet had already crushed the outer defenses. Xuanmu had activated her elemental cleansing and the 5-element array, but against the thick-hided thunder beast, her efforts seemed like a drop of water in the ocean. Even the combined skills of hundreds of inheritors had barely managed to shave off a quarter of the beast's health. It was a sobering realization, to say the least. Xuanmu's eyes filled with despair as she wondered if this was truly the end. High above in the clouds, the white elf princess, Moe, watched the carnage with cold indifference. The male elf beside her even remarked that watching the weak struggle was a form of cruelty. They were already preparing to leave, waiting for Ice City to become a ruin. Just as everything hung by a thread, a streak of white light cut across the horizon. Lin Feng arrived, carrying Lin Xiaoya on his back as he activated his limit star dive. Before the elves could even react, he had already flickered through the air, appearing instantaneously behind the massive thunder beast. Xuanmu's scream of "Lin Feng is here" reignited hope throughout the city. He didn't waste a single word, immediately activating his soul burst kill. Combining his 7-star energy with teleportation effects, he left a trail of afterimages across the battlefield. With his soul rank 6 stats, his twin bows were devastating. Every backstab tore away a massive chunk of the Thunder Beast's health. In just 30 seconds, he had stacked 30 layers of his burst kill state, and then he struck. With a sudden, violent detonation, the once invincible Thunder Beast let out a piercing cry of rage as its 100-meter-long body crashed heavily to the ground. It was an instant kill, a true one-shot, and the entire city erupted in a mountain-toppling wave of cheers, with some girls even shouting that they wanted to marry him. High above on the airship, Princess Mo suddenly stood up, her pupils flickering with a purple light as she stared intently at Lin Feng's silhouette. She realized he was a skywalker, that legendary profession, but what shocked her even more was when he summoned the pig bird. For the first time, the proud elven princess showed a look of sheer terror. An ancient pig bird had actually acknowledged a human as its master. Lin Feng ignored the prying eyes from above and quietly devoured the thunder beast's soul, causing his soul experience to skyrocket instantly. Taking advantage of the gap in the siege, he mowed down lesser monsters while leading Xiaoya and Xuanmu, his level reaching 122 during the frantic slaughter. By the 30th wave, level 120 gold-devouring beasts burst from the earth, creatures that consume metal and possess a defensive power that is a nightmare for any fortress. He ordered Xuanmu to control the formation while the pig bird unleashed its spirit fire, all while he activated his storm field to draw the monster's hatred. Xuanmu used her 5-element array to lock them firmly in place, and under the pig bird's indestructible spirit fire bombardment, the scene became quite intense. The metallic bodies of the gold-devouring beasts were melted into pools of molten iron, and Lin Feng moved quickly to snatch their shimmering golden souls. As that soul energy entered his body, he felt a thunderous roar in his mind. His soul experience was full, and he was finally breaking through. As the 40th wave was wiped out, his soul cultivation officially stepped into the 7th rank, a milestone that changed everything. He could feel a surging, majestic power deep within his soul, and his Skywalker attributes underwent another qualitative transformation, his twin bows surpassing 90,000 power. His movement speed became so fast that even after images were hard to capture, but he was surprised to find that Xuanmu, a top elementalist, was still at rank 3. He asked her with genuine confusion if she had ever tried devouring souls, to which she replied that souls were simply too difficult to catch before they vanished. Xuanmu's answer left him between laughter and tears. It seemed his godlike speed wasn't just for combat, but a literal cheat code for soul cultivation. While others saw fleeting spirits that vanished in an instant, to him, they were merely fruits waiting to be picked. Meanwhile, back in the clouds, the White Elves' conspiracy continued as the effeminate male elf, Urxius, complained to Princess Moe with a twisted expression of pure resentment. He asked Her Highness if they were really going to let these lowly ants from Blue Star survive this ordeal. Princess Moe replied coldly that the ants would only be allowed to pass the trial if they proved themselves useful to her people.